The hangar deck of the Crimson Dawn smelled like burnt metal and dragon fire. Riley Brooks wiped grease from her hands and glanced up at the reinforced containment cell at the far end of the bay. Behind those energy barriers lived the most dangerous creature on the ship. They called him Ash. Riley had heard the stories. Everyone had. 5 riders dead in 3 months. The last one, a decorated pilot named Jackson, had lasted exactly 12 minutes before Ash crushed him against the containment wall. The medical team couldn't save him. After that, nobody wanted to go near the dragon. Not the handlers. Not the veteran riders. Nobody. Riley was just an engineer. She fixed ships, calibrated weapons systems, and kept the carrier running. She'd lost her hearing 2 years ago when a plasma grenade went off too close during a boarding action. The medical bay had given her cochlear implants that mostly worked, but everything sounded different now. Distant. Like she was underwater. Most of the crew had stopped talking to her after that. Not because they were cruel, but because it was awkward. The other species on the ship communicated through telepathy or complex sound frequencies her implants couldn't process. She'd become invisible. Just another human in a galaxy that didn't really need them. But she noticed things other people missed. Like the way Ash behaved. The other engineers avoided working anywhere near his cell. They'd request different assignments, take longer routes through the ship, anything to stay away. Riley's workstation was right next to the observation window. She could see him while she worked. At first, she understood the fear. Ash was massive, easily 50 feet long with scales like black armor and eyes that glowed amber in the dim light. War dragons were bioengineered for combat, designed to tear through enemy ships and survive in the vacuum of space. They were living weapons. But after a few weeks of working near him, Riley started seeing patterns. Ash would pace his cell every morning at exactly the same time. 6 steps forward, turn, 6 steps back. Over and over. When the handlers brought food, he wouldn't eat until they left. If anyone approached too quickly, he'd slam against the barrier, but if they moved slowly, he'd just watch. This wasn't random violence. This was trauma. Riley knew trauma. She'd seen it in soldiers who came back from the front lines. The hypervigilance. The defensive aggression. The way they'd flinch at sudden movements or sounds. Ash moved like a veteran with PTSD, not a mindless monster. One night, she pulled up his service record on her datapad. 37 confirmed kills. 3 years of active combat. He'd been the Coalition's best war dragon, partnered with a rider named Hayes who'd survived longer than anyone. Then something happened during a battle near the frontier. Hayes died. The official report said combat casualty, but it was vague. After that, Ash became unmanageable. Riley noticed something else. The scars covering Ash's body didn't all match. Battle damage left specific patterns: plasma burns, projectile impacts, energy weapon scoring. But some of Ash's scars looked different. Symmetrical. Deliberate. Like someone had tested weapons on him. She started staying late, watching him through the observation window when the rest of the crew had gone to their quarters. The hangar was quiet at night, just the hum of the ship's engines and the occasional crackle of the containment field. One evening, she saw him staring directly at her. Most people would have backed away. Riley just stared back. She was tired of being afraid. Tired of being invisible. Tired of everyone treating damaged things like they were worthless. She made a decision that probably should have scared her more than it did. Riley walked to the containment controls. Her hand hovered over the button that would lower the energy barrier. This was insane. Ash had killed 5 trained riders. She was an engineer who couldn't even hear properly anymore. But something in his eyes looked familiar. That same lost expression she'd seen in her mirror for 2 years. The barrier flickered off. Ash could have lunged forward. Could have ended her in seconds. Instead, he went completely still. His massive head tilted, studying her. Riley took a breath and stepped into the cell. Her cochlear implants picked up something strange, a low-frequency vibration that felt like distant thunder. It wasn't coming through her ears. She felt it in her chest, in her bones. Ash was making a sound too low for most species to hear, but her implants translated it into sensation. She raised her hand slowly, using sign language. She didn't expect him to understand. She just wanted to show she wasn't a threat. Ash watched her fingers move. Then, impossibly, he lowered his head. Riley took another step forward and placed her hand on his scarred scales. They were warm, almost hot, and she could feel his heartbeat through the armor plating. Strong. Steady. Alive. Her implants suddenly crackled with interference. Images flashed through her mind, not her memories, but his. Laboratory lights. Pain. Scientists in white coats. A rider screaming. Betrayal. Riley understood. Ash wasn't broken. He'd been tortured. And now everyone wanted him dead for defending himself. She kept her hand on his scars and whispered, "I'm going to help you." Riley started visiting Ash every night after her shift ended. She'd grab a ration pack, sit outside his cell with her back against the wall, and just exist near him. At first, the other engineers thought she'd lost her mind. A few reported her to their supervisor, but Commander Hayes was too busy planning the next offensive to care about one engineer sitting near a dragon nobody wanted anyway. The first week, Ash ignored her completely. He'd pace his cell, occasionally glancing her way, but mostly acted like she wasn't there. Riley didn't mind. She'd pull out her data pad and work on maintenance reports, sometimes talking to herself just to fill the silence. With her hearing mostly gone, the quiet didn't bother her anymore. During the second week, something changed. Ash stopped pacing when she arrived. He'd settle in the corner of his cell, those amber eyes fixed on her. Riley started using sign language while she talked, partly habit from communicating with other deaf crew members, partly because she liked the rhythm of it. Her hands moved through the air, forming words and sentences that Ash couldn't possibly understand. Except he watched. Intently. Riley noticed he'd tilt his head when she signed certain words. She tested it one night, signing food repeatedly. Ash's eyes tracked to the feeding mechanism in his cell. She signed water. His gaze shifted to the water dispenser. It could have been coincidence, but Riley didn't think so. War dragons were supposed to be intelligent, but the Coalition treated them like smart animals, not thinking beings. The neural harnesses riders used basically turned them into remote-controlled fighters. Nobody bothered teaching them anything beyond combat commands. Riley started signing to him deliberately, creating a basic vocabulary. Simple things at first. Sit. Stand. Come. Ash responded to about half of them, which was more than she'd expected. But the real breakthrough came when she realized communication wasn't just visual. Her cochlear implants had always been glitchy. They'd pick up electromagnetic interference, translate sounds weirdly, sometimes vibrate when strong fields passed nearby. Around Ash, they went crazy. At first, Riley thought it was just the containment barrier or the ship systems. Then she noticed the patterns. When Ash was calm, her implants hummed softly. When he was agitated, they'd spike and crackle. When he was curious, they'd pulse in steady rhythms. She wasn't hearing him, she was feeling his electromagnetic field through her implants. War dragons generated massive amounts of bioelectricity for their plasma breath weapons. Ash was basically broadcasting his emotional state, and Riley was the only person on the ship who could sense it. She tested the theory by watching him while checking her implant readings. Angry spike. Calm hum. Curious pulse. Every time, without fail. Riley started responding. When her implants spiked with his anger, she'd stay perfectly still and breathe slowly. When they hummed with calm, she'd sign good or give a thumbs up. When they pulsed with curiosity, she'd show him things, tools from her workshop, pictures on her datapad, whatever she had handy. Ash started responding back. He'd shift his electromagnetic field deliberately, and Riley would feel different sensations through her implants. A quick pulse meant yes. A double pulse meant no. A long vibration meant he wanted her attention. They were developing their own language, something nobody else could hear or understand. 3 weeks after her first visit, Riley brought her toolkit and sat inside his cell. She didn't ask permission from anyone. Just walked in like it was normal. Ash watched her spread out her tools and start repairing a plasma torch that had been acting up. The maintenance logs would later show that Lieutenant Brooks spent 3 hours inside the War Dragon's cell that night. What they didn't show was that Ash moved closer, settling down near her while she worked. Or that he made that low rumbling sound that made her chest vibrate. Or that she fell asleep leaning against his side, the warmth of his scales better than any heating unit. She woke up 2 hours later, still alive, with Ash's wing partially draped over her like a blanket. That's when Riley knew the truth. Ash wasn't dangerous. He was protective. Every rider he'd attacked had come at him with neural harnesses, trying to force control. They'd approached him like handlers breaking a wild horse, not like people meeting a person. Ash had been defending his mind, his autonomy, his right to exist as more than a weapon. Riley started digging deeper into his records, using access codes she probably shouldn't have had. She found redacted files, classified reports, and medical logs that made her sick. The Coalition's War Dragon program wasn't just training these creatures. They were experimenting on them. Neural modification. Behavior conditioning. Pain compliance protocols. Ash's rider, Hayes, had been trying to expose it. That's what got him killed. The official report said combat casualty, but the detailed medical file told a different story. Hayes had been shot from behind with a coalition weapon. Someone had murdered him and blamed it on the battle. Ash had witnessed it. And when the handlers tried to erase his memories with neural reprogramming, he'd fought back. Every rider after Hayes had been part of the cover-up, trying to force Ash into compliance. No wonder he'd killed them. Riley sat in his cell that night, her hand on his scarred head, feeling the vibrations of his electromagnetic field pulse through her implants. "They think you're the monster," she said quietly. "But they're wrong. And I'm going to prove it." Ash rumbled, and Riley felt something she hadn't felt in 2 years. Purpose. Riley walked into Commander Hayes' office with a data pad full of evidence and a plan that would either save Ash or get her court-martialed. Probably both. Hayes looked up from his desk, clearly annoyed at the interruption. He was a veteran officer, gray-haired and tired, with the kind of face that had seen too many battles. "Lieutenant Brooks. This better be important." "It is, sir." Riley set the data pad on his desk. "The War Dragon program is corrupt. Officials have been conducting unauthorized experiments on the dragons. Ash's rider was murdered to cover it up, and Ash has been defending himself ever since." Hayes stared at her for a long moment. Then he picked up the data pad and started scrolling through the files. His expression darkened with each page. "Where did you get this? Does it matter?" "It does if you hacked classified systems." "Sir, they tortured him. They killed his rider. And now they want to execute him for fighting back." Hayes set down the data pad and rubbed his face. "Even if this is true, and I conduct an investigation, Ash is still scheduled for termination in 3 days. He's killed 5 riders. The council won't reverse that decision based on potential evidence." Riley had expected this. She'd rehearsed her next words 100 times, but they still felt insane coming out of her mouth. "Then let me ride him." Hayes actually laughed. It wasn't a kind laugh. "You're an engineer, Lieutenant. Not a pilot. Not a rider. And no offense, but you can't even hear properly." "That's exactly why I can ride him." Riley leaned forward. "Every rider who's approached Ash tried to force a neural connection. They treated him like a machine. I don't need neural harnesses or telepathic links. Ash and I already communicate." "Through what?" "Sign language." "Through trust." Hayes stood up and walked to the window overlooking the hangar bay. Riley could see Ash's containment cell from here, a dark corner everyone avoided. "The council will never approve this. A human has never successfully bonded with a war dragon. It's physically impossible without the neural interface." "Then I'll be the first." "Sir, you have 2 choices. Let me try, or execute a dragon who was tortured by his own people. Either way, the truth about this program needs to come out." Hayes was quiet for a long time. Finally, he turned back to her. "1 test flight. That's all I can give you. If you fail, if Ash shows any aggression, the termination order stands. And I'll be launching a full investigation into these files regardless. That's all I'm asking for." The next morning, the entire hangar crew gathered to watch Riley die. That's what they expected. The betting pools gave her less than 5 minutes. Some of the veteran riders showed up just to say they'd witnessed the shortest dragon rider career in Coalition history. Riley ignored them. She walked to Ash's cell with her flight suit on and no neural harness in her hands. The containment field dropped, and she stepped inside. Ash raised his massive head. Through her implants, Riley felt his electromagnetic field pulse with recognition. She signed ready and placed her hand on his neck. This was the part nobody understood. Riding a war dragon wasn't about controlling them. It was about partnership. Riley climbed onto Ash's back, settling into the natural groove between his shoulder blades. There were no saddles, no restraints, no technology forcing them to connect. She pressed both palms flat against his scales and felt his heartbeat sync with hers. The vibrations traveled through her hands, up her arms, into her chest. Her cochlear implants translated his electromagnetic field into sensation. She felt his anticipation, his nervousness, his hope. Riley signed against his scales, pressure points she'd mapped over the past weeks. "Let's show them." Ash moved. Not with the jerky, forced motions of a dragon under neural control, but with fluid grace. He walked to the launch bay while Riley stayed balanced on his back, moving with him like they'd done this 1,000 times. The hangar doors opened to the black void of space. Ash's wings unfurled, each one longer than a fighter ship. Riley felt his muscles tense beneath her. And then they flew. It was nothing like the simulator training Riley had watched other riders go through. There was no computer interface showing her speed and trajectory. No targeting systems highlighting enemies. Just her, Ash, and the stars. She communicated through touch and electromagnetic sensation. A pressure on his left shoulder meant turn left. A double tap meant dive. Her implants picked up his intentions before he moved. She felt him about to barrel roll and shifted her weight accordingly. They moved like one creature. When Ash banked hard right, Riley was already leaning into the turn. When he pulled up into a vertical climb, she pressed flat against his back. Every movement was a conversation, a call and response that happened faster than thought. Below them, through the hangar windows, Riley knew the crew was watching in stunned silence. Commander Hayes stood at the observation deck, probably reconsidering everything he knew about war dragons and riders. After 30 minutes, Ash glided back into the hangar and landed smoothly. Riley slid off his back and scratched behind his jaw, feeling the pleased rumble through her implants. Around them, the hangar was completely silent. Hayes approached slowly, staring at them like he'd witnessed something impossible. "How did you do that?" Riley smiled. "I listened. Just not with my ears." Riley had exactly 2 days of being an official War Dragon rider before everything went sideways. The alarm siren started screaming at 0400 hours. Riley jolted awake in her quarters, her cochlear implants picking up the distorted wail of the emergency broadcast. She pulled on her flight suit and ran to the hangar bay, joining the flood of crew members scrambling to their stations. Commander Hayes was already there, his face grim. Enemy fleet detected at the frontier colonies. 30 ships, including 3 dreadnoughts. They're targeting civilian evacuation transports. Riley's stomach dropped. The frontier colonies held over 50,000 people, mostly families of coalition soldiers. If those transports went down, thousands would die. "All war dragons are launching," Hayes continued. "That includes you, Lieutenant. If you can't handle combat, stay in formation and don't get in the way." Riley nodded and headed to Ash's holding area. The other riders were already mounting their dragons, checking weapon systems and activating neural harnesses. Most of them still looked at Riley like she was a kid playing dress-up. A few actively sneered. A veteran rider named Carter stopped near her. His dragon, a scarred beast called Thunder, rumbled with barely controlled aggression. "Try not to die too quickly, Brooks. We don't have time to scrape you off an asteroid." Riley ignored him and placed her hand on Ash's side. Through her implants, she felt his eagerness mixed with concern. He knew what was coming. War dragons remembered battles, remembered friends who didn't come back. She climbed onto his back and pressed her palms to his scales. "We've got this," she signed against his neck. "Together." Ash's electromagnetic field pulsed with determination. The hangar doors opened, and 12 war dragons launched into space. The flight to the frontier took 20 minutes at full speed. Riley spent the time syncing with Ash, feeling the rhythm of his movements, the flow of his energy. Other riders barked commands at their dragons through neural links. Riley just breathed and listened to the vibrations traveling through Ash's body. Then they hit the combat zone, and everything became chaos. Enemy fighters swarmed like angry insects. Plasma fire streaked through the void, bright and deadly. The 3 dreadnoughts hung in space like massive metal predators, their weapons ports glowing as they charged. Below them, 5 civilian transports tried desperately to reach the coalition fleet, their shields flickering under sustained fire. "All dragons, engage enemy fighters," Hayes' voice crackled over the comm. "Protect those transports." The war dragons scattered, each one diving into the swarm. Riley felt Ash tense beneath her, and she gave him the signal. He dove hard, wings tucked tight, moving faster than the Neuralink dragons. They slammed into a group of enemy fighters, Ash's claws tearing through hull plating while his plasma breath melted targeting systems. Riley didn't use a targeting computer. She felt where Ash wanted to move and shifted her weight to help him. When he wanted to roll, she leaned. When he wanted to dive, she pressed flat. They moved like water, unpredictable and fluid. An enemy fighter locked onto them, weapons charging. Riley felt Ash's intention through her implants a split second before he moved. She pressed her left hand down hard, and Ash barrel rolled right, the plasma blast missing by meters. Then he twisted back, catching the fighter with his tail and sending it spinning into an asteroid. "Brooks, on your 6. Carter's voice shouted over the comm. Riley felt it before she saw it, 3 fighters closing from behind. Her implants crackled with Ash's alarm. She signed rapidly against his scales, and Ash pulled a maneuver that would have killed most riders. He flipped completely upside down, flying backward while maintaining speed. His plasma breath took out 2 fighters. The third veered off in panic. What the hell was that? Carter sounded stunned. Riley didn't answer. She'd spotted something that made her blood freeze. One of the dreadnoughts had locked all weapons on a single transport. The civilian ship's shields were already failing. In 10 seconds, 3,000 people would die. Through her implants, Riley felt Ash understand the same thing. He was already accelerating before she gave the signal. Brooks, what are you doing? Hayes demanded. Saving them. Riley and Ash dove toward the dreadnought at full speed. Every weapon on that massive ship turned toward them. Her implants screamed with warnings as targeting systems locked on. But Riley kept her hands steady on Ash's scales, trusting him completely. At the last possible second, Ash spread his wings wide, using his armored body as a shield between the dreadnought and the transport. The weapons fired. Energy beams slammed into Ash's scales, each impact making Riley's teeth rattle. She felt his pain through her implants, felt the scales cracking under the assault. But he held position. Riley reached forward and manually activated the emergency override on Ash's plasma weapon. It was dangerous, bypassing safety systems, but they needed maximum power. She counted in her head, feeling the energy build in Ash's chest through the vibrations. 3, 2, 1. Ash unleashed everything he had. The plasma breath hit the dreadnought's weapon ports, and the entire section exploded in a chain reaction. The massive ship listed sideways, weapons offline. The civilian transport shot past them to safety. Ash's wings faltered. Riley felt him falling and wrapped herself tight against his neck. Stay with me, she whispered, knowing he'd feel the vibration even if he couldn't hear the words. Thunder swooped beneath them, Carter's voice tight over the comm. I've got you, Brooks. Just hang on. The Coalition fleet arrived 5 minutes later and finished the battle. But by then, Riley was focused entirely on keeping Ash conscious as they limped back to the Crimson Dawn, his scales cracked and bleeding, his electromagnetic field weak and flickering. She refused to leave his side in the medical bay, her hand on his head while the doctors worked. And slowly, very slowly, his field strengthened under her touch. Ash spent 3 days in the medical bay, his body covered in regeneration gel and monitoring equipment. Riley barely left his side. She slept in a chair next to his recovery pod, her hand pressed against the transparent surface so he could sense her electromagnetic signature through her implants. The medical staff tried to explain that war dragons healed faster without emotional interference. Riley told them to check the monitors. Every time she stepped away, Ash's vital signs became erratic. When she returned and touched the pod, everything stabilized. It doesn't make scientific sense, the head doctor complained. Maybe that's the problem, Riley replied. You've been treating them like machines instead of living beings. By the 4th day, Ash was strong enough to leave the medical bay. Riley walked beside him back to the hangar, and something felt different. The crew members didn't avoid them anymore. They stopped and stared, but it was respect now, not fear. Some even nodded to Riley as she passed. Commander Hayes found her in the hangar that evening. He had a data pad in his hand and an expression Riley couldn't quite read. The investigation is complete. 4 senior officials in the War Dragon program have been arrested. Another 6 are under review. The neural experimentation protocols have been suspended indefinitely. Riley felt a weight lift from her chest. And the other dragons? That's why I'm here. Hayes pulled up files on the data pad. We have 17 war dragons currently labeled as unstable or non-compliant. They were all scheduled for termination. Based on your success with Ash, the Council is willing to try alternative bonding methods. You mean finding them partners instead of controllers? Exactly. But we need someone to run the program. Someone who understands what these dragons have been through. Hayes looked at her directly. I'm recommending you for the position. You'd train the next generation of riders, focusing on partnership rather than domination. Riley glanced at Ash, who watched her with those intelligent amber eyes. Through her implants, she felt his approval, warm and steady. I'll do it. But I choose the candidates. Who are you thinking? The people everyone else overlooks. The ones who don't fit the standard profile. Veterans with disabilities. Species without telepathic abilities. People who've been told they're not good enough. Riley smiled slightly. Turns out, we're perfect for this. The program started small. Riley's first recruit was a pilot named Jordan who'd lost both legs in combat. The Coalition had retired him, saying he couldn't handle the physical demands of dragon riding. Riley pointed out that dragon riding wasn't about legs, it was about connection. Jordan bonded with a dragon named Storm who'd been labeled aggressive after refusing 3 neural harness fittings. Turned out Storm just didn't like having her mind invaded. Jordan communicated through touch and vibration patterns, similar to how Riley worked with Ash. Within 2 weeks, they flew better than half the traditionally trained pairs. Next came a Terran woman named Blake who had severe anxiety that made standard military protocol nearly impossible for her. The rigid structure of neural-linked riding had failed her completely. But when she met a scarred dragon named Ember who'd been traumatized by laboratory testing, something clicked. They understood each other's triggers, learned to work through panic together, built trust slowly and carefully. More followed. A veteran with one eye who bonded with a dragon blinded on one side, their shared field of vision made them more aware, not less. A rider who couldn't speak verbally but signed fluently. Another who'd been deemed too emotionally unstable but whose empathy made him perfect for working with damaged dragons. The traditionally trained riders complained at first. They said Riley was lowering standards, putting unqualified people on dangerous creatures. Then they watched her team in combat simulations. The new pairs consistently outperformed neural-linked riders because they actually worked together. They anticipated each other. They trusted each other. 6 months after the Frontier battle, Riley stood before the Galactic Council with Ash at her side. The chamber was massive, filled with representatives from dozens of species. Most had never seen a war dragon up close. Ash's presence dominated the space, but he stood calm, his electromagnetic field steady. Riley had prepared a speech, but standing there, she decided to speak from her heart instead. For years, the Coalition has treated war dragons like weapons. Living tools to be controlled, reprogrammed, and discarded when they stopped being useful. We did the same thing to people. Anyone who didn't fit the mold was pushed aside. She gestured to Ash. This dragon was scheduled for execution because he refused to let anyone violate his mind. I was considered unfit for service because I can't hear the way others do. Everyone assumed we were broken. But we weren't broken. We just communicated differently. Riley pulled up holographic displays showing the success rates of her program. The riders in my program have a 0 casualty rate. 0. They have higher combat effectiveness ratings than traditionally trained pairs. And not one dragon has shown aggression toward their partner. Not one. A council member spoke up, a tall alien with multiple eyes. Your methods are unorthodox, Lieutenant. How do we know they'll work long-term? Because they're not methods. They're relationships. You can't force loyalty. You can't program trust. Those things have to be earned. Riley looked around the chamber. Humanity learned something a long time ago. What others call weakness can become our greatest strength. We adapt. We find new ways when the old ways don't work. And we never, ever give up on each other. She placed her hand on Ash's scales, feeling his steady presence through her implants. You wanted weapons. We're giving you partners. And partners are so much stronger. The council voted to reform the War Dragon program based on Riley's protocols. The neural harnesses were banned. Dragons would be treated as sentient beings with rights and choices. And the training program would prioritize connection over control. 3 years later, Riley stood in the hangar watching a new batch of riders meet their dragons for the first time. A young man with a prosthetic arm signed nervously to a dragon who'd lost part of his tail. A woman in a wheelchair rolled forward to touch the snout of a dragon who'd been labeled too gentle for combat. All around the hangar, people and dragons were finding each other. Ash rumbled beside her, and Riley felt contentment through her implants. They'd done it. They'd changed everything. Not by being perfect, but by refusing to accept that different meant broken. Sometimes the ones who can't follow the traditional path end up creating a better one. And it took a deaf engineer and a traumatized dragon to prove it.